Yes, indeedy. Welcome to the Upful LIFE Podcast, and I'm your host, B. Getz. Coming to you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland, California. And this is episode 18. I'm 18. Indeed. The Upful LIFE Podcast, episode 18, on that Alice Cooper. And with each episode, I just more and more empowered to do this show. People keep hitting me up, letting me know that I'm reaching them in a profound way, or an interesting way, or an invigorating fashion, or I just help them pass the time, informing them about something they had or now have an interest in. And that's some fulfilling shit. So, episode 18, trucking along, little by little, baby steps, doing the damn thing. I got cliches for days. Anyway, you know how we do around here, kicking things off with a deep bow and thank you to some movers and shakers in one way or another. And, less than 48 hours after Jam Base 20, the 20th anniversary party out here in Sweetwater with Bob Weir's spot in Mill Valley, just outside of San Francisco. And, there's a lot of history there. And I could tell quite a bit of it, but the short version is that they had the 20th anniversary party at Sweetwater where the classic lineup of Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey reunited for their first set in a very long time, and the Slip also reunited and played as the Slip for the first time in some time, and those kind of bookended a day filled with music and friends and family from the Jam Bass arc. And now Jam Bass, it really is the reason why you're hearing me on this podcast. The reason why I have chosen this route in life. I was at college in 99 in Vermont, just sort of poking around the internet for the first time. And I was seeing a lot of fish and needed to take what I was feeling about the shows and verbalize that and share it. And I started posting some reviews on fish.net, just elementary stuff. And from that, Jam Bass sent a couple little show reviews of different things in Burlington out to the Jam Bass email, and heard back from Deanne Herman and Super D, as she was known, and in some circles still is. And that email correspondence turned into a real life, editor, writer, in its very primitive sense, that kind of relationship. I met her at my first Jazz Fest in 2000, and the rest is history. For many years, Jam Bass was the preeminent news source and hub for the jam world, and as they got more and more into it, they spread their wings further and further outside of the jam idiom spectrum, all the while being an authority for the jam thing too. And I was writing about the roots on jam bass in 2002. And then once Aaron Case and Dennis Cook, during their steering of the ship, really there was no holds barred, and they would touch anything that had merit. And they were fearless in doing so. And jam bass gets pigeonholed a lot for being just the jam band community, and that is the heartbeat. Going back to when founder Andy Gadiel and co-founder Teddy Kartzman and Deanne gave birth to jam bass all those years ago, it was for the jam world, but it had such a bigger scope once other folks like Dennis and Aaron Case and even Jeffrey Dupuis in New Orleans, and too many to name. Jake Krolik in Philadelphia, Tom Speed down south. I mean, there were these correspondents all over the country, and this is before social media where you just knew someone everywhere. So we just all filed these reports from the road, if you will, and it was the sort of wild, wild west of the internet, because nobody really knew anything yet. And print journalism wasn't exactly dead. Magazines weren't all the way into the internet thing, and newspapers were fighting tooth and nail to hold on to, that draconian institution. And, it was a real thrill, honor, privilege to be among the first to really, kick down the door. And, I by no means was a trailblazer. I just followed the lead blocking of the, Jesse Jarnos and Benji Eisens of the world. And, always looking up to the guys like David Fricke and whatnot, but the real heroes were the Dennis Cooks and the Jesse Jarnos and the Benji Eisens of the world, and just following in behind them, and just kind of spewing out my harebrained thoughts of, by the time 2007 rolled around, I was writing about Jay-Z on jam bass with the full green light, and it was a thrilling ride, and I was lucky to be a part of it, and that's what we were celebrating the other day, is the amazing sort of story arc of jam bass, and everything that sort of spiraled out of it, and with that came the soundtrack. So that's my history with jam bass, and I just wanted to say thank you to Andy Gadiel and Teddy Kartzman, Deanne Herman, Aaron Case, Dennis Cook, and the rest of the jam bass diaspora for, the lead blocking, as I said, and also opening up the portal so that I could, all these years, all these dreams, just kind of live out this fantasy of being like the almost famous dude, Cameron Crowe style. It's when I was sending away those reviews back in 99, 2000 from Vermont, I had no idea where it would take me, but jam bass is what made it possible. And even today, although I don't contribute any longer, I have a tremendous amount of admiration and respect for Scotty Bernstein, Scotty B, who we saw. It was one of the first people to welcome me to the party the other day, and said some really touching shit to me as I walked through. And he's like, steering the ship admirably and stoically and kind of back into the jam band idiom, and that's cool. And then they're doing their thing. So, I may work for some other folks these days, but I'm part of the jam bass family forever. I wave the flag forever. And I wanted to take a solid 10 minutes here and just offer a deep bow from the Upful LIFE Podcast. There would be no Upful LIFE Podcast or Upful LIFE period were it not for these cats at jam bass and what they, the curtain that they pulled back, or the door that they kicked down, or the trail that they blazed. Like I said, cliches for days, but you get my drift. So with that, we'll say thank you, jambase.com. Go see live music.
was up until now, cause you stayed up all night. That was the king of rock. I guess you could dunk in the front, the rally down, I think I'll be done. If I had a shotgun, know what I'd do. I straight point that shit up at the sky and shoot heading on down for you. Cause the bars are always open.
If you are looking at your podcast player wondering if you're still listening to Upful LIFE Podcast, you are. And yes, that is Sublime. And the reason that I'm playing Sublime on my show is we have one of the most influential people in their short-lived, uber-successful career as the featured guest for episode 18 of the Upful LIFE Podcast. And that dude is Jon Phillips of Silverback Music Group. Somebody that I have a great personal and budding professional relationship with, but at the time of this interview, we were just kind of talking about that, and we happened to both be in New Orleans for Jazz Fest, and Jon Phillips is somebody that I can say has an even longer and deeper rooted personal history and affinity for Jazz Fest and New Orleans than I do, and we discussed that at length. This interview that took place during Jazz Fest. Jon is a busy guy. He's down there primarily in a professional capacity. He's got lots of artists like his main cats, Dumpstaphunk and George Porter, and all those guys are so busy during Jazz Fest. Not to mention, he had other band business going on while he was down there. So it took a lot for him to move some mountains to get me an hour, and I was grateful that he did. Grateful indeed because we talked a lot of GD. Jon is an old school deadhead who put in a lot of years on the road with the boys, and we talk about that a little bit and the connection between New Orleans and the Grateful Dead and the roots of that with the Neville Brothers. So that was kind of our jumping off point, and then I wanted to get right into Sublime. It's no secret Sublime is not really in my wheelhouse, but I got a lot of admiration and respect for what they built in a short time, and naturally a lot of empathy for Brad's untimely demise and left a family behind, etc. So I've always been interested in the story, if somewhat less interested in the music, until I had this conversation with Jon, where he really took us back to the front lines of what that experience was like, discovering Sublime, and then sort of being their manager / bro that ushered them into the music business when no one else would believe in them. And it's a pretty amazing story that has a harrowing and tragic ending. And he doesn't shy away from that either. Talk a little bit about, Brad's issues with heroin and the constant battle that was for him and the band, and how that unfortunately ended. So it was a big part of my having him on the show was wanting to just discuss that, because, we haven't really moved in the right direction with the opiate epidemic in the 23 years since Bradley was taken. So that was really something I wanted to touch on with Jon, and I knew he was interested in speaking to me. So that's where we went first, after the sort of New Orleans history and the Grateful Dead stuff, and then we shift into some George Porter, who's an iconic musician, and not just in New Orleans, but all over the country and really the globe. So we talk a little bit about George's legendary presence, if you will, and his prolific activity, not just during Jazz Fest, but all the time. Then we get into Jon's main band or client these days, Slightly Stoopid, who he also believed in when no one else did, and has shepherded them and their meteoric rise to success. And we talk a bit about how that happened, and a little bit of insider stuff with Slightly Stoopid. And of course we couldn't be in New Orleans and not talk about his other client, Dumpstaphunk, and Ivan Neville, Ian Neville, and the trajectory of their musical journey and the roots in New Orleans and so forth. And I actually haven't listened back to the interview since we first did it, but I'm pretty sure that's what we covered, and I may be mistaken. There might be some more, but that'll just be a surprise for listeners. But, a little bit about Jon's own path, how he got into the music business. I had to finish up with some Grouch and Eligh, who are hip-hop artists out here on the West Coast that are like underground legends and been around for 2 decades. And believe it or not, Silverback and Jon have the Grouch and Eligh in their incredible stable as well. So I hope that you have enjoyed the Sublime Don't Push Garden Grove Right Back seg from October 21, 95. And without any further ado, please enjoy a deep dive with my man Jon Phillips from Silverback Music. And then we'll be back with a little more on episode 18 of the Upful LIFE Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. And we're sitting here live in the Bywater neighborhood in New Orleans, Louisiana, right smack in the middle of the days between of Jazz Fest. This is the Upful LIFE Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and I'm here with Jon Phillips of Silverback Management. So I want to welcome Jon to the show.
What's up? What's up, B?
Yeah, man.
Upful LIFE. Yeah.
Right on, man.
Upful LIFE. We're in the Bywater. Ivan Neville told me when he came over and visited, he goes, the Bywater? He's like, what's the Bywater? He's like, this is the upper 9th ward.
Right.
It's the 13th ward. So,
okay.
But
well, that's a good piece of history that people need to know.
Yeah, this is 5 blocks from the river, so it wasn't flooded right here.
Okay.
Fortunately, so.
Right on.
But
yeah, I've been seeing you down here at Jazz Fest for a long time, and everyone has their own kind of connection to the city and when they come here. So maybe just to start off, tell the people how you started coming down to New Orleans and your own history with Jazz Fest.
Well, I'm pretty much a Cali kid. I mean, I was born in New York, but I moved to the Bay Area when I was 6 years old, and was influenced early by Grateful Dead and, Bay Area music like that. And, of course, they had the influence of the Neville Brothers, who were opening for them quite a bit in the 80s, the first shows I started going to. That piqued my curiosity into New Orleans, as did an early affinity for the Radiators, which just happened for me off of hearing them on FM radio in the Bay Area. Dr. Doctor was a hit, and I kind of liked that tune and started exploring further. But what happened when I first got down here in 91, I just started going to college at UCLA, and a couple of friends of mine that were going to college at UC Santa Cruz, they're from Florida, and they knew I liked a lot of different kind of music, and they were like, you ever been to New Orleans? You got to come check out the Mardi Gras. And they had been coming here quite a while, and they weren't really the kind of guys that were doing the Bourbon Street, frat boy hang. They were music, heads, and had grown up coming to Mardi Gras from Florida as like a tradition, and so they said, come meet us out in New Orleans, and we'll show you the ropes. And thankfully I did, and I've been hooked ever since in the city. Just fell in love with the vibe and the feel and that kind of quality about New Orleans that just you can't manufacture. It just has that spirit to it. Yeah. And so coming down here, that first trip made a big, profound influence on me, and I was just like, I felt something here. And so I've been coming back pretty consistently since 92, I think, was actually Feb of 92 that I came here for Mardi Gras the first time. Saw Dr. John at the Riverwalk, Free Show, Night Tripper Show. Wow. Saw the Nevilles at Tips, saw the Rads. Even saw some punk rock. That girl punk band L7 was playing some little shithole place. We went and checked that out and
pretend we're dead.
Yeah, and then at that time I was I guess in college, so I wasn't yet in the music business. So I came down here as a fan and just to absorb things, and we were experimenting, if you know what I mean, in terms of mind expansion, and that was pretty cool and trippy in New Orleans.
I bet, man. Yeah. There's a whole different, because I live in the Bay now. I'm not from the Bay. I'm also originally East Coaster, but there's a whole psychedelic history and culture in the Bay, and this that's celebrated in the whole hippie dream. But there's an even deeper and maybe even more spiritual psychedelic culture here in New Orleans. And you're not the first person. Billy Ayuso interviewed earlier today, and a couple other people mentioned it since I've been here. And it's a real interesting thing you brought up, which is the parallel of of the Neville Brothers, Grateful Dead connection, and how many people from the Grateful Dead universe, fans and musicians, sort of, portal into this world down here. And now what we share together with our community here is like a grandchild of that marriage. So
busted on Bourbon Street.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but it's amazing just like to think that's alive and well in the spirit here.
Yeah, I mean,
it has been a long time
for sure. And some history there, obviously, and a lot of musical influence, so it's like remember reading, that Jerry Garcia was influenced by the Meters, like early when I first started, listening to that music. It was like, Meters, I better check them out. You know what I mean? Like, and Jerry's listening,
Right.
And that was kind of my first exposure to funk music, really.
Right on.
P-Funk and the Meters.
Yeah. So, but you're in SoCal as at this time in your life, going to UCLA. What was like the vibrant music scene that you were a part of down there in that early mid-90s era?
Well, I was booking shows on campus, like when I started. That was kind of my first music business endeavor, was just as a student, booking college campus shows. My first booking I ever booked as a show was Mike Watt and Firehose.
Sure.
Yeah. And they're a big Southern California influence. I mean, they were the Minutemen.
Right.
And
he's like an underground legend.
I like him, Mike Watt. He's the punk rock George Porter, and he's a guy that's been in his van playing 50 straight shows and doing what he called econocore, and it's just, he's still doing it. And he's had these similar kind of renaissances in a way over time, like just almost died, got healthier, just keeps playing and playing and plays it raw. And so Mike Watt and Firehose, they're from San Pedro, California, and the Minutemen, and they were a highly influential post-punk group. And the very first sample on a record that I was affiliated with, Sublime's 40 Ounces to Freedom, which sampled the Minutemen's, D. Boone from the Minutemen goes, "Punk rock saved our lives." That's the first sample on 40 Ounces to Freedom. The album opens up like that. And I got into Sublime in 93. I started working for a record label, and one of the other cats that was young like me at the label was just, we were sharing music and, sharing good sensibilia, and he just checked this tape out, 40 Ounces to Freedom, and he gave me the first cassette of Sublime. And
that was made on a 4-track or something, right? It's like super do-it-yourself.
It's very, actually 40 Ounces to Freedom was made at Cal State Dominguez Hills as a recording project for the founder of Skunk Records, Miguel Happel. He became a kind of honorary fourth member of Sublime. He recorded the first record and kind of got them in the studio first and did live sound for them. And he recorded 40 Ounces to Freedom as his college music project.
Oh, right.
Recording school.
Was there something before?
There was some other tapes that were you can find, if you could find them, I mean, but there was Ja Won't Pay the Bills. That was an earlier one too.
So 93, you get into the Sublime sort of culture universe.
And that was the first thing that hit me, actually, as hard as the Grateful Dead, because it was a band that actually was combining all these influences that I liked. They had, a Descendant song, but they also had Scarlet Begonias from the Dead, and they had Bob Marley's Trenchtown Rock, and they had a lot of reggae music and samples like the Beastie Boys, and a fusion of all these different sounds that nobody had really done before. And just from a kind of subculturally speaking, they covered all this ground that was all the music that we had listened to coming up, and then Bradley kind of put it all together in a package that sounded like nothing else but had all those elements. So it really it captivated me, and I just became really passionate about Brad and Sublime's music around 93. And by 1994, I had gotten friendly with the band and was going to, their underground shows down in Huntington Beach and Long Beach. And there was a definite underground scene. And you didn't get that in Hollywood. There's big separation between being in LA or being in a, Southern California beach city. And Sublime was playing for 300 to 500 kids at these underground music venues, and it was a real deal, and it was punk rock, DIY, it was real. It was it was party music for these people, but it was steeped in a subculture that was very distinctively Long Beach.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the next phase, and I started going to the shows, and I had transitioned from graduating in '93 into starting to work for a record label called Gasoline Alley Music, and they were affiliated with MCA Universal Records. And so I, as a young A&R, talent rep at Gasoline Alley, I brought them Sublime. I was listening to this music that my friend Greg Abramson gave me, and this is a band that I want to sign and try to help them achieve greater success.
Yeah,
I thought that they really had the ingredients to shine a light and make a big impact in the music world.
I mean, and it was a good bet, but unfortunately, you didn't really see the fruition until it was a little too late. I know it's tough to talk about.
Well, I mean, it's one of those bittersweet things, like ultimately the music is the triumph, and that found the light of day, and we all get that gift, Brad didn't stick around. But when I first brought the band to the label, I was very honest with the brass, the guys that, had to cut the check. I was like, I'm going to tell you, I'll bet the farm on this music. It's like the next Nirvana, because Cobain had already had the success, and he got to tour under it and, play for thousands, tens of thousands of people in Europe, around the world. Sublime was still just a little, garage band getting into the theater, getting to the next level, but never got to never got to relish in the success that they had once they became, pop culture. But I represented from the get-go, once I found out that Brad was, using hard drugs, that I said, I bet the farm the music, this would be the next Nirvana. The scene coming from Long Beach and Southern Cal, it had Sublime and No Doubt. I mean, music's regional, right? Like Seattle grunge was happening. That was the big 90s explosion, 90 to 94 or 5. And then the next thing is California. And I said, hey, Sublime, Brad Knoll, that's the guy, And,
and I mean, you were right. They're ahead of their time, literally. And I guess what I wanted to kind of ask is, was there an incubation period where they were, you all knew in SoCal, one of these days this shit's going to happen? Or was it
that he would die, or that the music was...
that the music, that he would become, not he, but
honestly,
that Sublime would be, a really huge,
for me was both. I mean, I definitely thought that potentially both things could happen, Hopefully not the latter.
Right.
And thankfully for us, the latter didn't happen until after he made and crafted the self-titled record in '96. But I mean, I had ultimate confidence that music was going to penetrate and become classic. Mm-hmm. A lot of other people didn't necessarily. I mean, there was a hard sell to the music business because their early recordings were low fidelity, like you said, and Rob and the Hood, you listen to that record, and you got Raleigh Theodore Saker's Soliloquies, was just a crazy guy in a halfway house spouting out like William S. Burroughs kind of stream of consciousness, ad-lib, craziness and profanity, and nobody wanted to necessarily hearing that, and then hearing little songs interspliced between. It was people had a hard time digesting it that were the Suits, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the Suits.
Suits didn't really...
When you go in as an A&R and you have to present this and convince them, right?
Well, I was such a pain in the ass that, eventually they just, I think, were just give this kid his chance. He's bugging me, But if you really looked at it, I mean, they were starting to cultivate a pretty large underground audience, and that was something where, you knew if it was hitting people like that, it could, permeate into other areas, and they gave me a shot. What's that?
I was it was wildfire once they did get behind it and the train started rolling.
Yeah, I mean, well, finally, after I started working with them, they had the 2 independent records, 40 Ounce of Freedom and Robin the Hood, and somebody at K-Rock Radio in LA, the big FM powerhouse station, alternative station, decided to drop the song Date Rape in 1995 on the air. And
was that just a album cut, or was that a single?
It was a cut that people like the band, like it was one of their more humorous kind of little slice of life cuts. It wasn't the more serious side of the band, but that was definitely part of their, their DNA and makeup. Like there was humor, there was intellect, there was there's a bit of everything, voodoo, but Date Rape got on radio because it kind of had the novelty thing, and the guy who put it on, I mean, he was right. That song hit the airwaves, and mind you, it was 95. They had recorded and released that song in 92 on their own. So it took so it took 3 years for it to get to, say, the commercial level, and they dropped it on the radio, and I don't think K-Rock ever had a bigger hit than that. Wow. That's definitely one of the top 5 hits ever in on K-Rock.
Did they ever play like the Weenie Roast or anything?
Yeah, the funny thing is, at that point, once they got popular from that song on K-Rock, they got asked to play the Weenie Roast, and the rumor had it that Sublime wasn't playing that song at their shows because they were getting sick of it. Right. And K-Rock made me, the program director, made me sign a waiver that they were, if they got that they had to play it. So I told Bradley, I'm like, dude, you can't fuck this up and put me, in hot water at the station. It's going to ultimately affect your career, And he kind of kept me hanging in suspense until they busted it at that thing, but they did. And they also, that same afternoon, they played a song, Saw Red, and Gwen Stefani from No Doubt came out and joined them, and there's some video footage of that on YouTube. It was historical times, it was 1995, and those bands were starting to, I got to live, thankfully, in that time period,
Yeah, that's amazing.
The last of the golden era of, like, hard CD sales, and actually people were buying. There was, it was a different time for sure. Yeah. Technology hadn't taken over yet. It's still an old-fashioned, kind of way of doing it. And Sublime toured, like, I mean, they had that mentality, record your own music, do it yourself, tour.
Was he able to tour? I mean, being that he was sick and struggling, were they able to get out?
Definitely was a concern. Like, the first trip I ever took with them was to New York for CMJ. It's a convention that younger bands go to. Right. And we had set up, because now they're on a label, and that's what you're setting up shows and trying to get them out there in the industry. And so we all flew out to New York to play a few shows, and I actually just remember, like, Brad, like, eagerly awaiting his bag to come off the baggage claim because, like, make sure his shit's there, Right. And that was kind of the first indication for me, like this might be a problem travel-wise, like, what if you can't get his dope there? Then he's, and I was not experienced with anything like that before. I was we were guinea pigs. I was 24 years old, 25 years old when I met the band. So first time having, like, experience dealing with addiction and an addict, that happened to be one of the greatest music, brainchilds ever, in my opinion. And I did try to help him. He got busted early on too, so the label was like, we want him to travel. If they're going to make it, they're going to have to go overseas. So there was the label actually did put up money for a drug rehabilitation program and drug diversion to keep him out of court, because he got busted actually and had a possession charge, and so to get him off he had to go do this program. And I was flying on an airplane with him to the Bay Area quite frequently to have him go to see this counselor, and he was trying to wean off. And
I was going to ask, he did make some good faith efforts from time to time.
Yeah, he detoxed a few times, and
I read an interview with his widow where she talked about that. Some of those times in his life, it was pretty excruciating.
Yeah, I mean, it was good when he made it over the hump and was clairvoyant, and just, he was just, you got to see a side of him that was really the true essence of his being, and I wish I got a lot more times with him like that, because he was just a super brilliant individual. I mean, he is like a history book, just super intelligent with a world view. And unfortunately, I mean, they get so written off as kind of just a punk rock party band and things like that, but I have to say that Bradley was, an intellectual that had, like, very deep kind of thoughts and world vision. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's reflected in his music, and that's why it touches so many people. There's an honesty there, but also like that thing that
struggle, demon. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a recovery element to my podcast. We've talked a lot about this on some other episodes, not so much Bradley, but just how, addiction works and hurts people, and everyday people. And that guy, like the way you talk about Bradley so, like, eloquently and with such reverence, it's beautiful to hear, and it's just tragic to know that all these years later, we're talking about it, and what could have been. That guy to me is Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon, who died here in New Orleans outside Tipitina's, and you know, those guys were like 15 months from one another, and you know, it's just hard to imagine what might have been, and I just wanted to, you know, kind of honor, so that they didn't die in vain, like just kind of honor like the brilliance of Bradley Nowell and the effect that he continues to have on people. The
music lives on, you know, thankfully, and Bradley would have been 50 last year, so I wrote a letter to him on Facebook that I posted up. It was like just kind of talking to him from down here and being like perspective on one, I mean, how much time has gone by, but also how deeply affected his music affected people and hit, because he never got to see the light of day.
Right.
You know?
I mean, Santeria blew after he had passed.
Yeah, What I Got, Santeria, that whole self-titled record, it spawned 4 major hits, and you know, the catalog sold 15 million.
To a generation.
For sure, and you know, he recorded that record and heard it, and he called me up once he got back. He detoxed again from making the record in Texas. He was recording it at Willie Nelson's ranch with Paul Leary from the Butthole Surfers, and Paul had called me and said, like, we got to get Brad home. He's going to die here. He's like, you know, he was...
Surfers were no fucking angels.
Oh, there's, I mean, dude, incidentally, I heard Sonny did before. I've actually...
Former world champion surfer.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy is just, I mean, if you think about... Yeah, there's definitely an edge there, you know, so that's something, there's a parallel. I mean, anyone at a level of that, you know, talent, you know, there's I've usually seen some kind of a conflict too, you know, and that's sometimes what drives it, you know.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you going down that road with Bradley and just talking about that era of your life. And I kind of want to just kind of respectfully move on to some of the more current things that are positive things you've got going on. You know, what was your like move after you know, you lived through the nightmare of Bradley dying, and then ex-Sublime gets big?
Yeah.
And, what was the next band that, you know, you really...
Well, I started on the cusp of that, and the record label dissipated and whatnot. That's when I started my own company, Silverback Music, in 1998.
Wow, so you're 21 years in.
Yeah, and what a long, strange trip it's been, man. But I started a management company, so I want to help artists. Like my passion was kind of more on the artist side than the suit side, on the label side. You know, you don't always have the same agenda. So I felt like from my experiences, I could help the artists and navigate the, you know, treacherous course of the music business, and which it is. And I actually just started to help the younger band. Well, Long Beach Dub came out of Sublime, and then Bradley, and he had introduced me to Slightly Stoopid when they were 16-year-old kids. He was helping them out, kind of teaching them a little licks and about reggae and about recording, and they recorded the first record of Slightly Stoopid together in Sublime's little makeshift studio, which I got to see, you know, that take place. And Miles and Kyle from Slightly Stoopid they were just 16-year-old kids, you know, playing little punk rock songs but they had a chemistry with each other, and they had some real talent underneath, and Brad recognized that really early. And symbolically, you know, he introduced me. He's like, this is Miles from Slightly Stoopid, and I always kind of took it like he was passing me the torch. Like, if you want this music to really continue and go on, like, this is Miles. He could take it down the road for you. And they did. Slightly Stoopid, you know, we started to help them in 1998 when we started Silverback, and they were putting out independent records on Skunk, which was Sublime's label, and they just took the, you know, the lessons in get in the van, you know, because you got to get out there and tour and play for people. So those dudes, like, and they worked their asses off for, you know, 10 years to get to the level of, hey, now we're playing some real venues and whatnot. And they had the endorsement of Sublime, but they never got to go and tour with Sublime. There was no tour, you know, so they did it on their own. And so, you know, Silverback kind of started with that, and then we signed Fishbone, which is, you know, a legendary, influential, like, they're the band that influenced Sublime, no doubt, but also Chili Peppers and Primus and, you know, you name it, like...
They're incredible.
Yep, so had the privilege of starting to work with them in 2005. And
what was that? That wasn't back in the Reality of My Surroundings era.
No, this was past. That was
90s,
actually no, that was 90s. I was a fan then, but they had gone through every manager in the music business. Their train was falling off the tracks, and I met Norwood, and I mean, Fishbone's a reason why actually David Kahn produced some of Sublime's record, because he produced Truth and Soul for Fishbone, and that's like a seminal record for them. And when I heard that, I was like, we should get that guy to do some work. And I called Norwood up. I said, well, I ran into him at the Vipe Room. I think I said, Norwood, I just like signed this band Sublime, and I want to potentially have David Kahn produce some tracks. And what happened was Fishbone had rumored to punch David Kahn out in the recording studio, which did happen. Wow. But he just said that, you know, there's a lot of volatility, and Fish, the drummer, Norwood's brother,
he's such a badass.
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, that was just they were punk rock too. So that did happen. But he said, you know, confirmed we made our best music with him, and then David cut 4 hits with Sublime pretty much. So
and then worked with Stoopid.
Nah, you know, after that he actually worked with Sugar Ray and made The Fly, and then I kind of didn't want to work with him after that.
Understand.
But no, he took the formula and applied it to you know, made another big hit. But Stoopid took a more grassroots approach. They didn't really want anybody necessarily like touching their music and making it, you know, they want it to be pure, and I respect those guys for that. I would say the biggest blessing in their career was like they didn't sign to Interscope Records when Interscope wanted to sign them, but you know, at the end of the day, they took the longer road to success, and you know, they're aging gracefully. Like you're very much in the context of a Grateful Dead kind of model, you know. And
independent of itself, operating.
Yeah, and a legion of subculture of you know, real fans are living that lifestyle. The Stoopid heads, and yeah, it's interesting for me too. And I mean, I'm just blessed to be able to have something that different things that parallel that experience, but Slightly Stoopid very heavily does. And,
it's interesting parallel you brought up earlier about like the changing of the music business and retail and like hard copies, and now and like there are a lot of bands that didn't necessarily gracefully transition into that era, who are from like the old model, you know, who are used to the record company advance and tour support and all, and that whole model fell apart with the end of like retail music. But Stoopid has been like ahead of the curve, like you were saying, by creating that model, now that they've really gracefully transitioned into the new business model.
Yeah, I mean, we did it out of necessity. They kind of had the tail end of the record era where they had early fans that were buying CDs, and there wasn't online, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't even, there was something called a chat board, you know, and a lot of the early online action on Stoopid was a chat board where people were talking on there, right? But you were still buying CDs and all that. They've maintained such a like loyal fan base that a lot of those people bought CDs for a long time as we were transitioning into digital, but we didn't have a label, and we had to figure out ahead of the curve how to survival, you know what I mean? How to use all the tools that were there, and some of that started to become technology. And as a touring band, building a career that way, you're not as reliant upon the radio hit or the label advance or whatever. You're cultivating like a live paradigm and revenue stream that's really your lifeline and bread and butter. And so that helps, and you know, that mentality helped to be able to, I guess, you know, adapt to and you know, we all grew with the technology too, but we're just, I think, probably one of the first like bands to be having to use that next. And some people were what could you say, like record companies didn't want to accept the fact that like you can't stop technology, this is going in this direction, you know, so you got to get with it and and then things totally changed, and now it's Spotify, and you know what I mean, so we keep I think if you keep just putting good music and good content out there, the word's going to spread, and hopefully people want to come and buy a ticket to the show, because you can't replace the experience of live music. That's why we're all here in New Orleans, 100%. Right? At Jazz Fest. I mean, we Jones for that experience. It's, you know, keeps us
what we do.
It keeps us going, and so incidentally, the only time that I got here for Jazz Fest, or not the only time Slightly Stoopid and Fishbone they actually played Jazz Fest together in 2005 or 7. So that was neither one have been back yet. So I'd love to get those guys back here.
Right on.
They've all jammed together, and we've had. In 2010 was the year Stoopid came through and played the Republic during Voodoo, or I think it was during Voodoo. But that's when I reached out to Ian and Ivan Neville to come sit in with Stoopid.
Right. And
try to like cross the lines of this music that I was really digging down here, funk-based music, and try to kind of genre bend that with some of the California reggae textures. And that show was pretty epic. There was a sound check rehearsal early, and got to listen to those guys kind of work some shit out and feel the grooves. And yeah, they crushed that one, and that kind of birthed. I'd known Ian and Ivan for a while before that, just being out here on the streets and going to shows and, connecting and try to get them a few times, like, to I don't know, a couple of times I told Ian, man, let me come down. Guys are your age and you guys should make music together. And I was talking about him playing with Stoopid, and it happened. And we've become integrated a lot. There's been quite a few sessions, and Ian's toured with Stoopid and comes down Closer to the Sun and sits in with the band. And we did Bob Weir's TRI Studios together with Ian and Ivan and Denson and Bob Weir in 2011. And that's really my mission. That's really what I thrive on, in terms of what I'm doing is the art of the collaboration and trying to like somehow construct something, a vehicle that creates like a new sound in a way, that's been something that I guess I'm chasing for in a way.
A new sound, but that's rooted in the classic stuff, just like you were saying with Sublime, taking all these elements of what is dope but putting it into something totally brand new. Like conceptually it's the same thing you're trying to do. That's awesome, man. I was going to segue into your clients in New Orleans. You mentioned you had a history with Ian and Ivan, and now Dumpstafunk's a part of the Silverback stable for many years now, right?
Yeah, since 2010. I think I'm the longest lasting manager they've had. But yeah, and I mean these, I was fortunate enough to get down here and start seeing all this music, and I think those guys felt a certain sincerity, from where I was coming from. The early shows down here, like George Porter really, really turned me on to New Orleans when I started coming down here and seeing like the late night Superfly shows, and he was out playing the old Howlin' Wolf and
Jimmy's.
Jimmy's, And there was one show I remember where it was Mike Clark's Prescription Renewal with Mike Clark and Headhunters, Bill and George was up there, and I mean it was just one of these things that was truly mind-blowing music for me, that I had never heard anything like that. And I started feeling like George was really the heartbeat of the town, and he became somebody that really, really inspired me to get deeper into New Orleans. And I started becoming somewhat friendly with George, and I asked him a few times over the years, like one time he had a 2007 House of Blues late night show that Derek Trucks played guitar on. It was a Funky Meters. And that was one of the most mind-blowing late night sets I had ever seen. And I told him, yo, George, what about that set with Derek Trucks? Mind you, in 2007, Derek Trucks was still kind of a kid. He had just gotten a recording contract with Sony. And I said, George, let's put out that show. I want my label to actually release that one, And I was begging George he's like, man, we can't really fuck with Derek because he just got, he's got one of the last good recording contracts in the business. And I still would like to hear the 2007 Funky Meters with Derek Trucks tape, but I'll have to tap George for that one and see if he's got it in the archive. But that relationship goes back pretty far, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I started officially working with George Porter. Alex Bowen had been managing him in town, and Alex wanted to widen his net in the management world, and so I let him come over to Silverback, and I'll not let him. I welcomed him to come over with George Porter, and it's been a kind of glorious relationship in a way for me, like that kind of like solidified this whole vision for New Orleans. So like the fact that Silverback gets to work with George and Ian and Ivan and Tony Hall and Nick Daniels and a network of people in my favorite city in the world, really, it's pretty mind-boggling. I reflect on it when I sometimes do these interviews, and it's like, it's life is kind of you can manifest these things, and really, if you believe in them, you can make them happen, and
will them to happen.
Yeah, and it's been satisfying to see George go through a period where he's had some hardships by losing his wife Era, and Art Neville can't play anymore. His best friend's in the hospital. So I was like, I told George, I like rather befriend you. It's not like a music business thing. Like, I just want to help you, and I think like his last 2 years, and I feel a lot of it is also probably the spirit of his wife looking down on him too. But like, look at the things that have happened. He's gotten, I think, more popular than he had been in other years. He's gotten accolades. He got not that this has anything to do with me. He got a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. He got asked to sit in and play with Dead and Company, and that's a big. And I think more people. Phil the other night, major highlight for me. And
to hear Phil over the Zig drums was just like a dream.
Then, totally, it was just organic. He wasn't plugged in, just a straight up in the Ampeg, and him and George dual bass lines.
I had chills, man.
Yeah, me too.
Chills.
And I
also didn't know it was coming.
Yeah, well, that
blindsided me.
When Foundation of Funk did Lock-In when Bobby and Mayer came out and Dead Drummers, nobody knew. Like, I knew because I put it together, but like that was the whole thing. Like, to have a surprise like that, and if you listen back to Zig announce that to the audience as it was happening, and nobody knew, and then they finally come up.
Yeah, I watched the stream.
Yeah, and you could go still check that out. But those are the moments, honestly, that I live for, and those are the moments that really keep me motivated to stay in this business, because it's not easy, and a lot of people do feel like or think, can get the impression. It is a lot of fun, man. Like, I enjoy what I do, but it's hard work too.
It is hard.
And the payoff, is when you're able to actually have these communication with these legends, and then actually make something like that come to fruition. That even those guys weren't like, maybe it'll happen, you know what I'm saying? But when it happens, and it happens, and the result is like,
I live for that too, man. And it's funny you say that, because I'm not as close to the action as you, but I, have a bit of a ringside seat to how things work or whatever. So when something like that with Phil coming out and I'm in the second row happens, and I had I had no idea.
I don't know what's under
it
wraps.
Was just.
Well, it didn't happen till that morning too. Right. How it happened is. But
I'd heard, like, now that I've heard he'd been spotted here or there, blah blah blah. But I just had no idea.
Well, Krasnow, I heard somebody say, Krasnow said, because he'd been playing with them in Family Band and all that, and hanging out with Graham, Phil's son, and I heard from someone else that somebody said, oh, Phil wants to sit in. And so I called Kraz that morning and say, like, yo, is that true? Because if it is, like, let's make this happen.
Right.
And Kraz had the, number for Graham or whatever, and Phil, so he's like, okay, I'll call him if you want it to happen, or the guys are cool with it. And we discussed maybe what they would play. Like, did George and Zig want to learn a Dead song like that day, or could they? Probably could, but like, we kind of were like, to make it easy and actually keep it to the meters. So it was Ico and Hey Pocky Way.
Yeah, it was perfect.
And
songs that Neville's songs that. That are songs that the Nevilles
meters,
made
Nevilles, exactly, right. and that the Dead both played, and so that was just that type of experience. And then when the music gets made, and those guys hadn't really played on stage together, maybe once I think George played with Phil at but he did the things Zig. With Bobby, but not the meters rhythm section. So that's
because how hard Zig hits when he's into it, right? How it pops. Like Deitch pointed out to me. He's like, nobody does that, right? So, and Phil with the bombs, and so Phil just letting loose, like you said, straight into the amp, pure unadulterated bombs, and Zig responding to that. I swear, it gave me chills.
Me too, man. It'll be one of those ones.
Thank you for the role you played in navigating and facilitating that. And thanks to George, and thanks to Phil, and Kraz.
Yeah.
That was one of those amazing only in New Orleans moments.
Yep, and man,
that's why we do this.
Phil was just a gem, man. I've hung out with Bob Weir a few times with Slightly Stoopid in Bob's studio, and I've hung out with Weir with Dumpstaphunk and Weir with George. All those guys have all played together, and Bobby was always like, he just loves to play, man. So he opened his we go to Sweetwater Mill Valley, and he's played quite and welcomes those guys and comes out himself. But I didn't know, I love Phil growing up. I'd never really got to know what his personality was like, and then for me, after getting to meet him at this show and kind of take care of him that night, we ended up, I mean, he was all over town. He rolled from that show, dropping bombs with the Meters to and the Foundation Funk to the Maple Leaf, and then I was in the Maison hanging out with G-Love, with Garrett, because he was in town with The Word, and we're buddies. We were watching Stanton and Scarrick and Blue Plate special show at the Maison, but Phil walked in there by himself, and I walked over to him like, yo, come over here with me and G-Love, we'll get you a drink, come hang with us. And so sure, you know, he recognized me because I'd helped him at the show, like get situated with Foundation, and he ended up, we drank tequilas all night and watched the music, and put him in an Uber at 5:30 in the morning back to the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, he was just hanging tough.
Yeah, I saw some photos of him around town and this and that.
He just seemed so, like, taking it all in and happy and vibrant, and like it was really cool to see. I mean,
I'm sure
79-year-old liver transplant survivors, double Anejo Casamigos on the rocks. I'm like, yeah, Phil.
Him,
but yeah, it was great to see him having that much fun. You know,
tomorrow's not promised. We all know that, unfortunately. And he's out there. He's like, look around. Let me get it how I live it, you know, like, why not? Good for him, man. That's really amazing.
I'm really proud of his son, and his son got up with Foundation of Funk too, Graham, and he threw down some tasty licks too.
Have a good thing,
like
a chemistry thing. They've done a lot. Right on, man.
Yeah, so I don't know what's next in store. Unfortunately, I got to go back home for the second weekend to another festival. There's a thing in Redondo Beach called Beach Life, and it's the first year of that, and that has Stoopid with Bob Weir sitting in as a special guest. Bob Weir and the Wolf Bros are on that the same night, and then Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys and Willie Nelson are the other headliners. So
that's a sweet
pretty iconic, you know, type of. So good problems to have, but we'll be sad to miss the second weekend of the 50th anniversary of Jazz Fest because.
But you know, you saw the George and Zig, Phil, and the Fairgrounds George and Zig with the Nevilles. And you do it right, and you'll be back next year and every year after that. For sure, as long as there's an Earth, and as long as there's a New Orleans, we'll be doing this for the rest of our lives. You know? Man. Yeah, Ja willing. Well, two things I wanted to get through on the way out. I know you got to hustle out of here.
Let me see. Go ahead.
First things first. While we're on the topic of New Orleans and your clients and stuff, who's your social media guy for Silverback? Who handles all that stuff?
I'm pretty much the one feeding everything there. Why, are you interested?
Well, no, I don't want to try to take anyone's job. I'm just saying, a lot of cats down here, or even in our scene, they're just not keeping their fans informed on a regular basis, and I've always been really impressed how, I wanted the person to get a shout out.
Thanks, man. Well, that I'm always underimpressed because I'm like, are we doing a good enough job? And I'm doing so many things. George, I gotta give props. George's social media. That's the one thing I told George when he came over. I'm like, look, this is the era that we gotta do something here. There's nothing happening really. He's doing his own videos and stuff, and George is one of those guys. As old as he is, he's very technology to me savvy. He's interested, and I'm always respect that. But you got to know how to do this kind of shit. Instagram, you can't just do live videos of yourself every day. But Johnny Ray, who I have met because he was a DJ on WWOZ.
I remember his show,
and that's how we met through that, and we became friends. He got let go when OZ had the changeover, and I just was appreciative of his knowledge of music, and that's what you need. I can't sit there necessarily and have to explain the culture or tell somebody who George Porter is. So, I was confident that I found somebody that could apply that knowledge in the social media aspect, and so I brought him on board to do George's social media specifically, and that's turned out to be a really good match. So, we feed each other information and whatnot, but he's doing all the posting on that, and we give props to Johnny Ray because
he gives me a lot of good info, for my job, and I'm writing stories, writing promos, trying to work with these cats. If I make an error, I was like, hey, heads up.
He's good like that. I can't bury my head into social.
I didn't know that he was the only guy, so I didn't
for George, he is, and then it's me on Silverback Music, and if you don't have Silverback Music on your Insta, please add us at Silverback Music. But I got people at Silverback that will handle the tedious posting nature and will look for hashtag posts and do show posts, but most of the cultural stuff and the lingo and what the voice is coming straight from here. I
feel like some other cats that I love in the industry, I won't name, could learn a thing or two about how George is presented and how you guys like get him to the people. You know what I mean? Everyone feels like they know him.
Yeah, that was the idea.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
He's such a nice guy. Like you gotta.
So shout out Johnny Ray.
Yeah, man.
And the last thing I want to say is I was looking at your roster, and I'd be remiss if I didn't just bring up Grouch and Eligh.
Oh yeah,
huge fan, and they're legends.
Yeah,
yeah. But how'd you get down with those cats?
Well, there's a
NorCal hip hop.
Yeah, and I grew up in NorCal, but that was they were living legends of hip hop from that collective.
Crew, right?
Yeah,
Micah 9.
Yep, and Murs and Scarab and a friend of mine who was a young hip hop promoter in Colorado. Actually became a friend because he was bugging me like, yo, dude, I want to work for your company and I want to do this. And he was just a very motivated young hip-hop fan, and he started building something out in Colorado that was popping with all the backpacker hip-hop groups, you know, and he hit me up and was like, hey, you know, I'd like to bring these guys, these MCs, Grouch and Eligh, to Silverback because I think they got, you know, one, they're legends, and two, and like I knew all about them, you know, but they have a business and they're smart, and so he brought him over. His name's Adam Struhl. He works out at Cervantes. Well, he was running the booking for Cervantes with Scott Morrill. If you've ever been in Denver and gone, that's a hub, right? Yeah. And then AEG Live recently picked him up, so he's now a talent buyer for AEG Live. But when he was really trying to be a manager, I gave him a shot with Grouch and Eligh to come over, and they became family. And yeah, I mean,
they're still on the roster.
They're still on the roster. They're still kind of doing their thing.
Semi-active, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of living legends kind of resuscitated, you know, which some of those shows, I mean, man, like they were amazing. I was glad I got to see them because I never really beforehand saw the collective all together, and then they like broke up. We did a record with Grouch and Eligh that they put out that had a collaboration with Pretty Lights called All These Lights, and that's kind of the entry point for us, was like we're going to work on a bigger scope for them, and so we made this video with Grouch and Eligh and Pretty Lights up in the Bay Area, and that song kind of took off for them off that record a little bit.
But I mean, like you said, going back, way back when, they've always had like a real like strong, small underground following, mad respect, you know, in the industry. And when I moved to NorCal, and I was living in Nevada City for 5 years, which is like a sleepy burner town up in ganja country, right? And they come through separate or once together, and places packed in like a whole bunch of NorCal kids knowing the lyrics and stuff. And I was just kind of blown away because I've always kind of dug them, but I wasn't really down. And I saw like the impact that those guys had.
Eligh, like I mean, he is one insane MC. Like his you know,
flow,
his flow and nature to rap. Like he's up there with like some of the best, I feel. And Grouch has a very, you know, distinctive characteristic to his.
They play off each other.
They do, and their personalities, and they're just smart. They're really dope guys, man. And Eli's like he's sober, so he had some, you know, issues back in the day. So he's just very serious about his art.
He's rapped about that.
Yeah, he's very serious about his art, and he's, you know, he just, those guys, I got to give them massive props for just being innovators. And you know, that's for me. Like, if there's a lot of people, what does it take to like get you in, like interested in working with somebody? I mean, innovation, and you know, there's got to be a somewhat and then I mean, for me, I like to think that there's the possibility that they are iconic, you know what I mean? So those guys, I feel like, fit that. Even if they are more underground, you don't know them, you should go check them out.
Yeah, Grouch and Eligh.
Underground hip hop.
Eligh.
Eligh and the Grouch.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because we know you got to roll. We're gonna wrap it up, but before we bounce, I was like, man, I got to get to Grouch and Eligh. Yeah. So I want to say thanks for making the time. Thanks for always making sure I get to see your artists live. We appreciate that very much.
Yeah, man. Well, we appreciate the coverage and just you being an ambassador for the funk and you know everything else. It's like we need more people, and if you want to do some social media, let's wrap.
As long as I'm not stepping on toes, for sure. We'll talk off the air, but we're gonna wrap it up from here in the Bywater with Jon Phillips, Silverback Management. It's been an honor and a privilege to get this download with you today. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. So, and I know the people will enjoy it, and I'll let you know when we're gonna go live with it in a couple weeks. All right,
man. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, dude. I'm sure I'll see you out tonight or maybe tomorrow before you leave town, but I'm going to sign off. This is the Upful LIFE Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and we'll see you next time. Yes, indeedy. Large up to my man Jon Phillips, Silverback Music, for that fantastic conversation down at the Jazz Fest in New Orleans just a few short weeks ago. It was really amazing to get some of the history of Grateful Dead and New Orleans connection with the Neville Brothers, talk a bit about some of his clients like George Porter Jr., and Fishbone, Dumpstaphunk, and of course the beautiful and tragic tale of Sublime and Bradley Nowell. I was never like heavy into Sublime's music by any means, but I always had a curious fixation on them because of his story and his untimely death and its proximity to that of Shannon Hoon, and then just how that was going on back then quite a bit, and continues to this day. But, you know, as a teenager, to be confronted by the deaths of these heroes, among them later on Lane Staley. Before any of this, we're talking about Kurt Cobain, and I could reel off a bunch of dead soldiers, but that's not the point. The point is that we've come a long way, but we really haven't come far at all, and we had losses like Bradley and Shannon Hoon way back when, and here we are. And as somebody who's struggled with my own issues through the years with pharmaceutical opiates, and I just always like to have my antenna up and seeing how we can help people, how we can educate people, even when it's telling these really demoralizing tales of people who have gone down along the way. So that was important for me, and I'm glad that Jon was comfortable discussing it, because he's got a long personal and professional relationship with Sublime and the remaining members and the families, and I was just really touched and really appreciate Jon going there. So with that, I want to transition after another thank you to Jon Phillips, Silverback Music, to Sam Darkangelo, my next guest of the Cannabis Voter Project, which is a part of headcount.org, nonprofit organization that's sole mission is to get out the vote. And I've often been disenfranchised and disillusioned by the political process, never more so than in 2000 with hanging chads, Florida, and all that shit. But those demons were resurrected in 2016, and I wanted to do my part to give people a platform to, reach the masses, even though the masses don't listen to my show. Maybe one day they will. In the meantime, I wanted to use my platform to reach people, and I feel strongly about cannabis, naturally. Both sides of the fence. I'm not blindly pro-legalization. I have some concerns on the side of heritage farmers, legacy farmers, the small farmer, the people who built this kingdom here on the West Coast. So yeah, we talked a lot about the political side of cannabis, about cannabis activism, and just about how you can get involved in political action. Sam also happens to be from Louisiana and spent a great deal of time in his youth and young adulthood in New Orleans, so naturally we had to touch on that, touch on Jazz Fest, touch on New Orleans as he knew it, as it is now. He's since moved to Austin, but has also lived in Brooklyn, so we went all over the map. Sam and I did. He's also a journalist, and that's actually how we first got on my radar, was his work with Offbeat and later Relics, and of course Live for Live Music. I saw him at the Royal Wedding in New Orleans a few months back when Kunj and Sarah tied the knot. So Sam and I have just been angling for a powwow of this sort. He was on Dead and Company tour with Headcount, Participation Row, and Alas. He came to the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland last week, and I pushed him to the front of the line because this is some important shit. So shout out to Sam Darkangelo and Andy Bernstein of Headcount, and look forward to being a portal to the people for work like this, Participation Row. So without any further ado, here is Sam Darkangelo, the Cannabis Voter Project, on the Upful LIFE Podcast, and I'm your host, B. Getz. All right, and we are live here, actually at the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland, California, and I am lucky. I'm on the Upful LIFE Podcast. It's your host, B. Getz, and like I said, I'm lucky. I have Sam Darkangelo here. He's a fellow journalist that I've come across in a variety of settings. He's also director of Headcount's Cannabis Voter Project, and has been a writer for Relics and New Orleans Offbeat, and even our Live for Live music as well. Yeah,
that's correct, yeah.
So you and I have crossed paths in more ways than one, and I'm stoked to finally sit down with you and have this opportunity.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah, man. So for the folks listening at home, before we get into all that good stuff, you're obviously traveling through. You've been on the road on like a sort of vision quest of sorts. Tell the people about this trip, where you started and what you're doing on the road.
Yeah, well, I already kind of had a trip planned to go see some friends in Las Vegas, and we were going to actually head out to Disneyland, where I'd never been out in LA, and then I got word that I also needed to be up here in the Bay Area for the Dead and Company shows that are coming up this weekend at Shoreline. So I figured, well, I've got a week in between these things, I might as well make a little trip out of it. So I drove up the California coast from LA, did the Highway 1 thing through Santa Barbara, Big Sur, Santa Cruz, Monterey Bay Area, and then ended up here. Did it over 3 days, and it was really, really great.
Yeah, I can imagine. I made a similar trip like that. I didn't start in Vegas, but up the Highway 1 and doing cool shit along the way with it was Fish at the time, but same thing, it's just like, all right, now we're going to go to these shows, right? And all right, while we're there, we're going to do this, that, and the next. So you had said you started in Vegas, but you're currently living in Austin, right?
I'm currently living in Austin.
Okay, well, you're from New Orleans, but you're living in
New Orleans, living in Austin.
All right,
yes.
Let's talk Austin first, because we're going to talk plenty about New Orleans.
Sure.
You're studying there?
Yeah, I'm getting my master's at the Lyndon Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin.
Oh, right on.
So doing a student thing there. So that's what brought me to Austin, which is a city I've always liked.
Yeah. Had you been to visit before you
Yeah, I've been to visit a few times. Few reasons, ACL, one of them, and
right.
It was good to kind of get a change of pace from New Orleans in a lot of ways. As much as I love, New Orleans, it's kind of a music town in a different sort of way. I'll never have the love for it that I have for New Orleans. I don't think I want to stay there permanently, but it's definitely really cool to get to spend a little bit of time there, for sure.
Has there anything been like super cool that you've done since you've been there, or a show you saw, or a place you went that was definitively Austin or whatever?
I mean, it's cliche, but I did my first South by Southwest.
Okay.
This past year, I guess 2 months ago or whatever, and I had a blast. I'd heard a lot of mixed reviews about South by as an event, but I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of things in a very short period of time, and I have nothing bad to say about that. It was very it's very Austin in the sense that it's just strange because it's such a cosmopolitan event. It's like Austin becomes New York City for 2 weeks. You have people from all over the world. It's just the place to be. And I definitely got caught up in the zeitgeist more than I thought I would.
There's nothing wrong with that, man. I mean, you're there and it's there.
Yeah, no,
it's an institution, and a lot of good comes out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I saw the coolest thing I saw actually was Henry Winkler, the actor.
The
Fonz. Yeah, well, now he's on Barry and he's killing it on that show. I don't know if you're watching that one.
No.
He just won an Emmy for it actually. But he did an acting masterclass where people lined up and they would do a full scene. And then he would critique their acting, honestly, as an acting coach, which is kind of what he does in the show Barry in character, but this was in real life, and it was, it was just fascinating. He was giving very honest acting advice to people.
That's amazing. I'm a huge Fonz fan. I always was when I was a kid, and he recently, not that recent, a couple years ago, he won a Clone's Choice Award on the Jim Rome Show.
Okay.
And he actually picked up the award, called in, and it was a hilarious moment. And
he was hilarious, too. Like, the whole thing was just funny, because he's just funny, you know?
Yeah, right on.
Yeah,
right on.
That was not music, but I was
Still,
like, wow, where else would I see that shit, you know?
Right on. Like they say, only in New Orleans, well, only at South by.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you were born and raised in New Orleans?
Yeah, I was born in New Orleans, raised outside of New Orleans, Mandeville on the North Shore, and went to school in New Orleans. Graduated from New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, NOCA.
Okay.
Wasn't really much of an artist, but it was a great experience.
So what did you study there?
I studied media arts, which is like filmmaking.
Right.
Kind of decided midway through that I didn't really want to be a filmmaker, but I didn't want to go to normal school either, so I was just going to kind of stick that out and really just have a good time. But what was great was, there's a lot of, great jazz musicians who came out of that program, a lot of great actors, so it's just cool to be surrounded with, like, New Orleans creative community at such a young age and to have a school that allows that to be nurtured the way that it should be in a place like New Orleans. So I don't know if you're familiar with NOCA, but it's pretty incredible. Yeah. Just this really well-funded, well-resourced creative arts high school. Not too well-funded, though. They always need money, so don't want to give off the wrong impression. But it's great, the resources they have for young artists in the New Orleans area.
Yeah, I bet, man. And there's still a strong need for more of that. Not just in New Orleans, but in schools around, because they're cutting, the arts budgets and in public education across the country, and even in a place like New Orleans, which is the heartbeat is music, and the tourism is because of music, and so much of the city, and it's the city I'm most familiar with in the U.S. just because of music, and going there and experiencing the culture there, and as somebody who was born and raised there and has had the privilege and opportunity to get out and do some cool shit outside of the New Orleans, like, how do you, it's a weird question, but like, how do you see folks like myself who sort of, and I want you to be frank, not just me, but people in general, there's a lot of like people who claim New Orleans who aren't from New Orleans, people who love it, who swear by it, who talk about it like it's their own, and it's not. And at the same time, I feel like I need to do my part to spread the gospel, to sort of, bring it to folks that might otherwise not know or should know, etc. And, sometimes I feel funny sitting across from a actual local, we're looking at a Jazz Fest poster on my wall, we're talking about New Orleans, and I'm not an authority, but in some conversations I might be seen as one. So I like to ask folks who are actually from there, to talk a little bit about their reality. And you're talking about NOCA, and that's something that folks should know about,
Yeah, I'm certainly not an authority on New Orleans either. I didn't even spend my childhood, near the city, but not even living in it exactly. And, I know when I is an authority, I think, on anything. You can only really speak for yourself. I think at the basis level, we need people like you as tourism dollars. So by all means, fall in love with the city of New Orleans and go and spend your money there. That's for damn sure. But yeah, the whole there are a lot of sort of, as New Orleans has become sort of a cool city in the same way that I guess the Bay is not nearly on this level, but there's been some really hard economic realities that the city's been dealing with in terms of things like housing. You've got stuff like Airbnb that's taken over the market. So kind of, I guess, be conscious of how you travel to a place like New Orleans. There's certain neighborhoods that have become, more or less unlivable for a lot of people because of the proliferation of short-term rentals, things like that, that have come with New Orleans being like a cool town. You start to get a lot more people who are, I guess, transient in the way that they sort of view the community. Like, when I lived in Brooklyn, for instance, most people I met were not from Brooklyn. And there were obviously, like, lots of people from Brooklyn in Brooklyn. But in the circles that I traveled in, the majority of people were not from Brooklyn. You can almost ask pretty much anybody, where are you from, as a conversation starter, because you were fairly certain it wouldn't be Brooklyn. And, as someone who's been that in another city, I, don't really have the best leg to stand on here, but it is interesting to see that that's become a thing in New Orleans. These people who move here for a couple of years because it's a cool, hip town, and then move on and never really have this interest in being a part of the community. Not because they oppose it or anything, but because it's just, they're not viewing it as a home necessarily. So,
right on. You feel like that you could draw a parallel line to Jazz Fest with that, as sort of how it's evolved, and maybe, I don't know, it's still something that's tremendous and awesome, but maybe has lost or evolved in a way that's less authentic to what is New Orleans. You hear that from a lot of locals, at least. You got to come to French Quarter Fest, or like
you do. Well, French Quarter Fest, yeah. I mean, it's you're not going to get the big name acts. Also, French Quarter Fest suffers from crowd issues as well. The price of being too popular and too good of an event. And free. Yeah, and I know at least Bayou Boogaloo was another great event that started charging, I believe, this year, a small ticket price.
They had a weather catastrophe, though.
The previous year, I was there for that. I was living by the bayou, so that was...
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just kind of would like to hear, like...
No, I hear you. It's a complicated thing. I mean, Jazz Fest in particular, like, I know a lot of people would say that their local musicians aren't getting as many gigs as they maybe were.
I was just talking about last week.
A few years ago, not even a few years ago, but many years ago,
or even a few.
Yeah, and it's a
different list.
It's interesting. The ticket prices have gotten really high for single day passes. The weekend, whatever. That's
it's $80 now.
I mean, I've only been, I'm 29. I've been going to Jazz Fests since I was on my own, maybe since I was 15 or 16. So 13, 14, 15 years, I've seen the ticket prices just absolutely skyrocket. Definitely at a much faster pace than inflation or any kind of thing like that. So.
Right. But that could be the same, could be said for concert industry in general.
Well,
absolutely. Talk about Dead and Company this weekend.
Totally.
Shoreline Dead and Company face values, $100,
right?
Give or take, just to get in the door.
Yeah, that's true. No, you're right. You're right about the concert industry. I mean, it's a demand thing. The Stones were pulling. What was the tickets they were selling those for? I don't even remember.
It was $185.
Yeah. It was a limited number. So
right.
It's
a hard reality and stuff. And I don't know. I still think that Jazz Fest has a ton of merit, even at an $80 face value ticket. And
I mean, it's a great event. It's a world-class event. There's a reason people come all over the world for Jazz Fest. But I do think it's interesting when you have the people who come. They come for Jazz Fest every year. Maybe come another time of the year. See if you really like New Orleans. Like, this isn't really what it is. This is like a kind of version of it. It's not what it is, but like you can come another time and get a totally different experience.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, I appreciate the local perspective, or growing up there and being around there and so forth. But you're here because you're on the road to do this Dead and Company thing at Shoreline for the Headcounts Cannabis Voter Project.
Yes.
And I know you've had your hand in a lot of things. You've been working with Lettuce, and you'll be doing that at Rage Rocks and stuff. And there's a lot we can talk about with cannabis law and voting, and I'm sure we'll take it wherever you want. I mean, I've had my own experiences, positive and tragic, on both sides of that coin. But how does that work for somebody like you? You table the event. You do have kind of any sort of outreach, workshops. What is the responsibilities of the director of the cannabis law? Just
kind of making everything.
As it pertains to shows.
Right. Well, with these shows, we're doing these 4 shows in the California run, Dead and Company at Shoreline, and then in LA, and then we're also going to be at the Folsom Field shows in Boulder for 2 nights as well. Headcount does this thing called Participation Row on the Dead and Company tour, and then at a number of festivals. It's essentially a nonprofit village kind of thing. They'll be registering people to vote with Headcount proper, and other organizations will be set up as well to educate people or get them signed up for other things. And Cannabis Voter Project will be one of the booths for the first time in a Participation Row at these Dead and Company shows. So we're kind of seeing, kind of feeling it out, seeing what works best, what's the best way to come to these shows and mobilize people to get them to get in touch with their legislators, to get them registered to vote, to get them making noise about cannabis policy and getting educated about cannabis policy.
And do you feel like the rock concert medium is an effective way to get the vote out in terms of, do you see palpable, upswing, turnout, interest, whatever, when you do these sort of events?
Yeah, well, what's interesting? I mean, Headcount has had their finger on this pulse for like a really long time.
I remember when they came out.
Yeah, and so, we've definitely found that concerts are a great place to register people to vote. Using artists and their social media presence is a great way to get people not just registering to vote, but excited about actually going to vote. And you can definitely tell a lot of the time when there's an election year, people are a lot more interested. People are, they want to register to vote. And what was interesting was this last midterm election, you saw almost, basically presidential election levels of interest in registering to vote and participating in the political process, which is usually not the case. In midterms, they're generally more active than an off year, but they're not presidential year level. And so that was interesting to see, especially at some of the younger concerts. You see a lot of people who are like really interested in being able to vote for the first time. There's a lot of interest in that right now. As far as the Cannabis Voter Project goes, people are kind of always interested in that. Cannabis is this, one of the reasons why Headcount decided to focus on cannabis as a get out the vote issue is because it's one of the only issues that has the power to get people who otherwise might not vote at all out to the polls. There's a lot of people who are apathetic about politics. When you're doing a voter registration drive, that's one of the biggest problems you run into is people who just know they can register to vote. They have the resources available to them to do it, but they choose not to. They don't really care about participating in the political process. Some of these people care about cannabis. They care about cannabis policy. Maybe they've grown cynical about it because of the sort of inertia surrounding the issue for so long. But if you can convince these people that there's a way that they can see their cannabis interests advanced through voting, then you're more likely to get them to actually to do that than if you were to just say, hey, register to vote.
Right.
So,
well, that's a two-pronged topic, so I want to take them both directions. So
Sure.
I want to go participating in the political process first. I don't have, and I'm speaking for myself here, I don't have a ton of faith in the whole thing anymore. And it's not just because of our current sitting president in general. If it can be manipulated and from voting districts redrawn to fucking hanging chads to now we've got computers and Russia and fucking Mark Zuckerberg somehow affecting the election. Like I myself, and I'm a well-read, educated cat who voted in several elections, I've lost a bit of faith in it. And you're sitting across from me, somebody we have a lot of common interests: music, journalism, cannabis. What do you say to a person like me? Why should I reinvest myself in this after I feel betrayed, lied to, misguided?
I mean, if you don't think that voting is, getting you what you want out of politics, and maybe you have plenty of reason to believe that, there are people who are getting what they want out of politics, and they're voting, Right. And, yeah, I mean, that's what I would tell somebody. There's no reason not to do it. That's for damn sure. Well,
there was a point in time where not voting was a vote, but now that's become cutting off your nose to spite your face. You might as well hand the other side the vote. But in a situation where you're not stoked on, I don't want to go down that road. I'm just saying I feel
Sure.
I feel apathetic, and I'm
Right.
Of course I'm going to continue to vote, but I don't have a lot of faith in the whole fucking thing, dude.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why cannabis is a great issue to focus on is because there's few issues where you can see clearly how that isn't the case. Why is marijuana legal in Colorado? Because people voted for it. Right. There was a concerted effort to get something on the ballot. It got on the ballot, and the people voted for it. What you're seeing now, the Illinois legislature, right? Just today, you saw that. The Senate passed a legalization bill.
Right.
It's going to go to the House. They're probably going to look at it in the next few days. Why did that happen? Because there was an election. There was a governor who ran on a pro-cannabis campaign. There were legislators who said that they would write this bill and that they would vote these ways on it, and so they did. And people knew that when they went out to the polls. It's not the only thing people vote on, but these things happen because elections happen. Right. Elections matter. Even in the places where it's not looking like it's going to happen, where governors campaigned on legalization, places like New York and Connecticut, where not at least, in the immediate future,
right.
The conversation is happening there to a much greater degree because of an election.
Right.
So it's not perfect, but we're here in California, 2016. This state
but that
voted.
was not necessarily a great thing. There's a dark side to that whole thing that I'm sure you know about in terms of small farmers being marginalized, and there's just a lot. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because we lose a lot of people that are listening that aren't familiar with the nuances of the law. But no, we do need to at least address that it's not a black and white issue. Like, should cannabis legal or not? If I could do it again, I would not have voted along with the legalization, the Prop 64, I guess it was, that legalized adult use here in 2016. Right. Just because I lived on ganja farms and worked for small farmers, and I've seen the trickle-down economics and how it's affected legacy farmers. And I'm not going to raise my voice at you. I'm just saying, like, it's something I'm passionate about, and I think it's important to understand that these are nuanced issues, and it's not like, should weed be legal or not? Of course it should be. I mean, talking to someone who did time for that shit. But I don't want to just rush to kick the door down because we're losing some important folks along the way.
Well, there's that question, and that's a good thing to bring up there because, in a lot of places it's not just about yes, no legalization, it's about how do we legalize, And again, there are organizations that are making their voice heard, that have concerns that you probably have, and who are trying to shape the legalization discussions in their states, in their areas, around those issues, and making sure that those things get addressed. But that's only happening because these people have chosen to participate in the political process, because they've gone and they've done the organizing work to get those issues raised. And if they weren't doing that, nobody would be talking about those things. So if you see legalization as something that's inevitable, maybe you want to make your voice heard about the how of legalization and not just the if.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a dear friend who's a major part of that grassroots movement, and she's programmed me well to be attuned to those type of things. But I just felt like I needed to kind of say that on the record, just like I wanted to hear from you why it's important for somebody who's disaffected or disenfranchised to re-engage. And I think you addressed that pretty succinctly and well.
Yeah. And, Cannabis Voter Project, we don't take a position. We take the position that people should be informed about cannabis policy. People should know where their elected officials stand. They should know what's happening in their state so that they can make their own informed decisions about what they believe. But
so if you don't take a side, if you will, what are some sort of what would be some news organizations or like sites or resources for people who wanted to inform themselves about cannabis, across the board? Because, in the fake news era, where do we go for that unbiased account?
So honestly, a great website, one, I read their newsletter every day, Marijuana Moment, is a guy named Tom Angel runs it. He's a great marijuana journalist, cannabis journalist. He's kind of on top of everything. I mean, you'll probably get half the stories there before you'll find them in some, major media outlet. If you want to keep up to date on like the what's going on, just the mechanics, this bill's here, this thing was said by this person in power, Marijuana Moment is a great place, great resources. And, you've got your High Times and your Cannabis Nows and other, people that have been writing about marijuana for a long time and are great resources as well. Marijuana Moment, though, I think if I had to plug one.
Okay. There's a great article in the New York Times about a week ago about a farmer from Humboldt County. Did you get a chance to read that?
No, I
haven't.
I'm
going to send it to you. It's passionate. It's the best of both worlds. It's incredible long-form journalism.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the New York Times going to give you that kind of thing.
But, I mean, it's a dude that I could have worked for, and it's a friend of friends, whatever. It's just a really, what do they say, like warts and all, detailed account of from the hills to legalization and, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. I just think it's really well written. So make sure I get that too.
No, I'd definitely like to read that.
So you've been working with, you got Headcount works with like lots of bands, right? And you find that like I know Lettuce has been great, and now there's
Lettuce has been fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I mean, they're great dudes, and they've been weed.
Great, yeah.
And they care about shit. They're conscious, and that really speaks to me. Not just them, but anytime an artist is willing to lend their voice to a cause. I remember when Rising Appalachia was very vocal about Standing Rock, and that spoke to me, and I ended up doing an interview with them over it, and really was like a portal for a lot of people to find out some shit, and that's really why we do this. What have been some of the artists along the way that have jumped on board besides Lettuce or Dead and Company with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean we've gotten endorsements from via social media from Revolution and 311. Bands like that. We've got Lucas Nelson did a thing. Margot Price took a photo for us. Right now, we're not really trying to branch super hard into the artist thing, the sort of standard headcount model of setting up at shows. We're being pretty judicious about how we do that right now. We're kind of actually looking for other ways to make a splash, but there's always going to be that component as well. I'd like to see us expand into other artists, but right now, no, we haven't been really doing much to like gather up endorsements or team up
Well, there was a lot of that. I remember back around like presidential elections and stuff, going back to like 2004 when they first started.
Sure.
Andy and that whole thing sort of happened in response to the post 9/11 stuff, and I always have seen like during the time of the presidential election is when everything ramps up and head count aligned with that. So I guess we can probably expect, just a really strong wave of this type of activism. From headcount as we get closer to 2020.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope. I mean, we're really laying the groundwork for what we hope will be a really strong push going into the 2020 elections to increase the visibility of cannabis as an issue, to get people really understanding that there's kind of a juncture right now in terms of cannabis policy, and
right.
If people want to see things steer the way that they want to see them steered, then they need to make their voice heard, right. Now, or especially going into 2020.
As somebody who grew up in Louisiana, and not even just in New Orleans, but out, I guess, would Mandeville have been rural-ish?
No, not really.
No?
More
suburban?
Suburban, yeah. It's
okay. But still in the heart of that region.
Sure.
And now you're in Texas, and you might be in the sort of liberal outpost of Texas, but you're in Texas. So what is when you're taking the temperature of the South? The Alabamas, the Mississippis, the Tennessees, right. Louisianas, and the Texases, and they're seeing Colorado getting rich and becoming this bustling metropolis, Denver, not just in music, but in so much. And it really, you can draw a direct parallel to legalization and what has happened. Mm-hmm. But then there's the red voting, conservative, I don't want to generalize, but you and I both know that's the voting bloc south in the Mason-Dixon line most of the time. What's the temperature on weed? Like, what's the temperature on cannabis? You see it like a domino effect, or you got work to do down there?
I mean, I think you'd see a domino effect if something were to happen. I think that's been pretty clear on the regional level. You saw Colorado, and then now Colorado, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, contiguous region there in the Northeast. You've had a lot of movement since Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, and now you're kind of seeing it come further south from there. Why is Illinois making big moves right now? Well, it probably has a little bit to do with the fact that Michigan, voted to legalize just this past November. So,
strictly economics.
Economics, but also kind of, there's sort of this regional mindset. Like, it's easy for a legislator in Mississippi to say, we don't care what they're doing over in California. But if Alabama and Louisiana have both done something, well, Mississippi, it's not so abstract anymore to the people there. So I think that's part of the reason why you see domino effects. It kind of changes the conception of what's possible in a certain political climate, too.
Right.
I mean, one of the latest polls that came out had Republicans, 51% of Republicans supporting cannabis legalization.
I mean, John Boehner is taking...
John Boehner, well, that's an interesting thing, too, because John Boehner and his people he's with have put their support pretty emphatically behind the States Act, which is a federal bill that would, make it official that states can do whatever they want to with regards to cannabis policy. So right now,
unilateral federal rule.
So no, it would still be Schedule 1. They wouldn't change the scheduling of cannabis at all, but it would say, right now, cannabis is illegal at the federal level, and that federal supremacy trickles down to the state level. Technically, the states are in violation of federal law by having, these legal cannabis programs. It hasn't really been enforced by any Justice Department since late in the second half of the Obama administration, but if the Justice Department wanted to, it would have the legal authority to crack down on cannabis, legal cannabis that was happening at the state level. So the States Act would just remove that possibility. Mm-hmm. And there are certain, elements, there's states that legislators, industry people who are very concerned with that. The idea that the feds could do something if they wanted to keeps things from, moving the way that certain people want to. So once that barrier is eventually lifted, you're probably going to see more movement in states that are more conservative. They won't have that argument anymore. A lot of people, their go-to thing is, it's still illegal at the federal level, so we're not even going to talk about it.
Right.
Now, the States Act wouldn't legalize it at the federal level, but there are bills right now that would totally end the federal prohibition of cannabis, completely deschedule cannabis at the federal level. Bills like the Marijuana Justice Act, I believe it's Cory Booker's bill, is one that does that, and there are others as well. But the one that is getting the most traction, I guess you would say, is the States Act, which isn't actually ending prohibition. It's allowing the states to do what they want. So that distinction, I think, is is an important one.
It definitely is, man. Thanks for breaking that down. I just found there's like an incredible hypocrisy and comedy in John Boehner's reemergence as a basically a cannabis lobbyist of some kind. But, that's the world we live in,
Yeah, and the whole states' rights approach definitely, plays into the kind of Republican Federalist ideology,
right.
the sort of states' rights sort of thing. It doesn't, go around that. So you could conceivably be opposed to legalizing marijuana, but still be okay with the States Act,
right?
Because it's just allowing power to be devolved from, the feds to the states or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot more movement in the South when something happens at the federal level. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Right on.
But I don't think you're that far out. I think a lot of it's a generational thing. The younger you go.
You got Florida getting
down the
medical,
ladder.
so they're...
Florida's getting medical, and hey, Florida might, Florida has ballot initiatives. That's another thing. So what you're seeing with the states that have legalized, it's this kind of sort of checkerboard of left-leaning states, generally speaking, that allow ballot initiatives are the ones that have legalized. With the exception of Alaska, most of the states that have legalized have generally been left-leaning. And because they allow ballot initiatives, it allows it to go through the process of people voting on it. The people are usually ahead of the politicians on a lot of issues. So once you start putting a bill to a state legislature, everyone's got their interest. There's all kind of negotiating that needs to happen. The whole process becomes a lot more complicated. So you've got a state like, say, Connecticut, Rhode Island, that might generally be considered as lefty as, a Massachusetts or a California, but which haven't had legalization really come to fruition yet because there's a whole legislative game that needs to be played before that can happen. It's not like a group gets the petition out, gets the signatures, puts the ballot on the, puts the initiative on the ballot, and then gets an up-down vote from the people. That's more likely to happen quickly, as history has shown, recent history has shown, than the whole legislative thing. That's why Illinois is such a big deal right now.
Because that was a legislative thing.
That was a legislative thing. The only state that is legalized through the legislature so far is Vermont. And they didn't legalize sales.
That's where I went to school.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, heady place.
Yeah.
But it's, they haven't legalized sales, and that's kind of a big distinction. There's no actual, dispensaries in Vermont. There's no industry. Legislature will probably change that soon.
Caregiver mode?
You can grow your own.
Okay.
It's decriminalized. You're not going to go to jail for it.
Right.
I'm sure there's plenty more nuances than I actually,
right.
totally
understand.
understand.
So the States Act would basically leave it to the Vermonts and the
Yes.
states to set up their own way of doing things.
Right.
It could be total prohibition to dispensaries and all points between.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
It basically more or less says, states can set their own policy, but for federal purposes, it would still be, Schedule 1 illegal.
Right.
So,
it had,
Yeah.
my whole situation was, not that it wouldn't have mattered, but it was before 2016, so it's a moot point, but it's having this conversation to talk about this and just thinking about not just myself, but anybody who's given any of themselves to fucking this whole thing. I knew what I was doing, and I knew that it wasn't legal, and I had to own that. But at the end of the day, it's just crazy to see this entire industry, not even a cottage industry, an industry explode around me. And I'm lucky that I'm, able to still partake and be a part of it, write about it, talk about it on my show, enjoy a spliff after we're done here, all that. But part of me just still a little angry,
Right.
And not just for myself, but for everybody who had to fucking, and I'm not trying to talk tough. I'm just saying, it's crazy. It dawned on me while we're having this conversation, the pendulum, and just how far we've come, and the carnage along the way. And on that note, if somebody is listening to this, and they want to be down, if they're inspired, whether by your story or our conversation, how do they get down with what you're doing? How do they bring the Cannabis Voter Project to whatever university or city or town or wherever they are? How do they get after it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get in touch with us. You can shoot us an email for sure. We're happy to talk to you.
What's the email?
Well, my email is let's go with I believe it's cannabisvoter@headcount.org.
Okay.
Shoot an email there.
I'll put it in the
that comes to
capsule.
me. And definitely do that. We also, we have a little text-in system. If you text voter canna to 40649, that's canna with 2 N's. 2 words, voter canna. It signs you up to the Cannabis Voter Project sort of text and email list. We send statewide updates. Your legislature passes something through the House that's going on to the Senate. Well, we'll let you know, and we'll tell you, here's how you reach out to your senator, your state senator, and you can tell them, I, your constituent, am a cannabis voter, and I support this bill or that bill, whatever it is. So that's a great way for, to get sort of our alerts and when immediate things are happening in your area. There's also, look up who's doing what in your area. A lot of these organizations that put things on the ballot, they were local groups, got together and did the petition drives, and so on and so forth. So, if there's probably a group in your state that's trying to do something. You get different levels of seriousness with these groups. Mm-hmm. But, people on the ground is how it often happens. So, definitely be on the lookout. Just literally Google, cannabis, this or that in my, Arizona, whatever state you're in, right. And you'll find probably a couple Facebook groups, do your due diligence as to who you actually want to reach out to. But there's, there's stuff going on pretty much everywhere. This issue's moving very rapidly.
All right. Well, we see that, and
also, of course, go to headcount.org and check out our volunteer page. You can sign up to volunteer at Headcount. Might not be a CVP thing, but Headcount's a great way to go and see some really awesome music and contribute
participation row, all that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Get involved with the politics in your area by registering people to vote at shows. You're liable to meet a lot of people who are pretty cool.
Yeah, right on. Well, we appreciate what you're doing, and I'm going to do my part to get the word out.
Yeah, and thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on here.
I'm glad you came over, and hopefully we'll cross paths sometime this weekend if I can make it out to the Dead and Company shows. I'd like to after work, but stranger things have happened.
Come on by Participation Row. We'll be out there. If anybody listening is in, the Denver, Boulder area, come on out to the Folsom Field Participation Row. We'll be there.
What's the date on those shows? Do you know them offhand?
I want to say it's July 7th and 8th. Could be 6th and 7th.
This will come out before then.
It's July 4th weekend. So
okay, right on. That's High Sierra, or maybe I make the trip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's always something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Cool, man. Well, we appreciate you. The Sam Darkangelo. I want to take one quick moment. You're staying in Berkeley, right?
I'm staying in Oakland.
Oh, you're staying in Oakland. Okay. I was going to say hit the Berkeley Patients group. That's my preferred.
Oh, okay. That's
my preferred dispensary here. This super mellow, the opposite of the rest of the industry. Is super humble shit.
I'll be going out to the Canna Craft place tomorrow.
I mean, obviously, big up Jen. We love Jen.
Yeah, I'll say what's up to Jen for you.
Yeah, right on. Well, we'll be signing off here with Sam Darkangelo of headcount.org and the Cannabis Voter Project. This is Begets, the Upful LIFE Podcast, and we'll see you next. Say thank you to Sam Darkangelo for coming through the Vibe Junkie studio for a proper powwow about pot politics, New Orleans, head count, so much more. Thanks, Sam. Let's do it again sometime and hit the journalism stuff. I'm a big fan of what you do. So thank you to Sam Darkangelo, and of course a large up and deep bow to Jon Phillips from Silverback Music. Well, I had a different segment recorded for the Vibe Junkie Jam of the Week, but just moments ago we were hit with the devastating news of the loss of the New Orleans icon, Dr. John, also known as Mac Rebenak, the Night Tripper. And even though we've been discussing New Orleans and profiling New Orleans and Jazz Fest on this podcast quite a bit of late, and I have written on the city many times, I am neither the authority nor is it the time for me, or really anyone other than a local cat, to pontificate or eulogize Dr. John. But I couldn't just go ahead and play another song because I just couldn't. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm just going to play a classic live rendition of Gree from 1970, Dutch Picnic Dutch Festival in Velsen, 1970, for the Vibe Junkie Jam of the Week. Because, I mean, who's got more vibe than Dr. John. So, deep condolences to all his family and friends and collaborators, band, past, present, and of course the great city of New Orleans and all of Dr. John's voluminous fans from sea to shining sea. So rest in power, Dr. John, and please enjoy this fantastic jam from 1970 as the Vibe Junkie Jam of the Week, and we'll wrap up episode 18 of the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and a deep bow to Dr. John.
when you can't control that girl. Try some out controlling her, so my baby. Get together, girl.